This is Gemara in Makkos, Daf Tes Vav, and today's share has been sponsored as an incredible schos refuah shalema for Tinok ben Miriam Ahuva b'soich sha'ar chayli Yisrael. We're on the last line of Yudalit Amid Beis, and once again an important announcement: anyone that has any summer yard sites or other occasions that they like to partner the Schus HaTorah with, please be in touch, as those dafim are being recorded prior to the summer. These are the dafim for Tammuz and Av. We pick it up on the bottom of Yudalim Beis. Amar Rabba Bar Barachana Amar Rav Yochanan Kol Loisasei Shekidma Asei Loikin Olav. Says the Gemara, we learned yesterday that we have a lav hanituk laasei. When we have a lav that could be remedied, that the Torah tells us the prescription what to do afterwards, the halacha is ein loikin alav. But says Rabbi Archana, the name of Rabbi Yochanan, but if it's a lav shekodmoy asei, that there was an asei in the Torah prior, then yes, loikin alav. The only time ein loikin alav is if the asei is after the lav. But if the asay is prior to the lav, then Eino Chanami, says the Gemara, there will yes be Malchus. Amru loy amart. So they heard this halacha and they say, did you say it? They turn to Rav Yochanan. As the top Rashi points out, Achim sheshamu mishmai v'lo yishamu mipeva amarit davar zeh. They asked Rav Yochanan, did you really say this? Amar lehu, and Rav Yochanan denies loy. Amar Rabba Elikim Amra, says Rabba, no. Elikim Alasana Shavua Amra. Rav Yochanan did indeed say it. Uchsiva v'tanina, and it's written in the Torah and Tanina. It's taught in a Mishnah that again, if the asay is first, then there will indeed be Malchus. Says the Gemara Ksiva, where do we find this in the Torah? On the third line of Tezvav Amar Aleph, says the Gemara, Vayishalchu min hamachaneh ve'goymer, and they should send out from the camp. V'lo yitamu es machaneim, they should not make their encampment tamei. So these are cases of a lav that the asay is written first, and tanina habalim mikdash tamei. Someone who comes into the Beis Hamikdash Tamei gets Malchus. So we see in this case in which there's an asay and then the lav, we find that the prescription is that is yes Malchus. Says the Gemara, okay, sounds gavaldik, but if that is true, alamai taima kahadarbe. So what is the reason that Rav Yochanan seemingly retracted on the top line when they asked Rav Yochanan if he said it? He said no. Answers the Gemara, Misham de Kasha le Oines. The reason is the Kasha of Oines. If an Oines married, and that the Kasha le Oines, excuse me. What is this case of an Oines? Titania. Oines is someone who has forced relations. Oines, someone who had forced relations, Shagiresht. The halacha is when one is Ma'anes, he has a halacha that he has to marry that person, as Rashi points out in the third narrow line. You have to stay married. So what happens if he divorced this woman, which of course he was not allowed to do, as the Torah says, so back into the Gemara. So im Yisraelu, the halacha is, if he's a Yisrael, then what? Machzir, then he has the asay. The Torah tells him, what should he do? Remarry her. Veino like it is no Malchus. Im Kaimu, says the Gemara, but if he's a Kayin, like it is yes Malchus, Veino Machzir, should not remarry her. So explains the Gemara, according to Rav Yochanan, this is shver. Im Yisraelu. What do we say in this brayso? Machzir ve'ino loika. But amai, according to what we just learned from Rabbi Yochanan, why not? Lo yisasei shekidmo yaseyu. This is a lo yisasei that was preceded by the asay. They have to marry this woman, And yet, what do we see? Velelki. Therefore, there should, yes, be Malkus, regardless if he remarries her. So why do we just say that there is not? Says the Gemara, Amar Ula. So Ula comes along, and he says, let's go back to the Psukim. Lo yoimar, the pasuk does not say lo yisiel isha ba'oines. The pasuk should not have said, and to him he should be as a wife ba'in oines. V'ligmar mimaitzi shemra. The Torah didn't need to write this. Then why? Because we should infer it from Maitzi Shemra that what? Uma Maitzi Shemra, if someone just defiles in word his wife, he says, and yet, what's the halacha of a Maitzi Shemra? The halacha is, she has to marry her. Since she did an actual ma'isa like kol shekin, he of course has to marry her. And therefore, says the Gemara, so lama nemar, so why lamaisa does the Torah spell it out? If it is not applicable to lefanav, to the detail that he has to marry her originally, because we just learned that we already could have derived that from Maitzi Shemra, Tananu Inun Lacharav, place it afterwards. What does that mean? That if he messed up, like we just said, Shein Gireish Yachzir, he has to remarry her. So says the Gemara, that's what the pasuk will be explicitly telling us. That's what the pasuk will be explicitly telling us to apply it to this other halacha, that lo tiel isha, he has to remarry her if he divorces her, and therefore this is a case of a lav hanitik la'aseh. It's not that there was an aseh and then the lav. The lav is a mamish remedied by the aseh, and therefore there'll be no malchus. Ask the Gemara, but wait, vakati oinis v'moitzi shamra loy gamer. You can't learn how to oinis from moitzi shamra. Why not? Tika lemifrach, smack in the middle of the the first one line is lemifrach mala moitzi shamra shkin loikum mishalem. And this case of oines does not have such a din. Ella rather says the Gemara lo yoimar lo tiel isha b'moitzi shamra. So the Gemara flips it. We thought we were learning from Maitzi Shemra. And the Gemara proves, no, we need the Psukim by Oines. So says the Gemara, fine. So don't say it by Maitzi Shemra. And Ligmar by Oines. That what? Ma Oines, in the case of an Oines, Einoi Loiko Mishalem. There's no Malkus and Tashlumim. And yet, what does the Torah teach us? Amarachmano. V'loiti Elisha. Maitzi Shemra. In which what? There is like a mishalem, like kol shekain. V'laman emar. So why lamaisa does the Torah say in a case of Maitzi Shemra v'loy tiel isha? Meaning the Maitzi Shemra to know inyan le'oines. Meaning lefanav to know inyan le'acharav. And that's going to teach us that if he divorces her, he has a din to remarry her. Says Gemara, wait. But in Maitzi Shemra me'oines nami like gomer, you can't learn how Maitzi Shemra from oines. Why? You could ask, as we started, that oines has the stringency. That wasn't just in word, it was in action. Maybe that's why the halacha comes out. Ella says the Gemara, lo yoimar lo tiel isha. Says the Gemara, the Torah should not have said, lo tiel isha b'maitzi Shemra. Why? Shari Ishtahi. Lamaisa, they're married. They did Kedusha and they didn't Nisuin. So Lama Nemar, why does the Torah say it? Imenu in the Maitzi Shemra, Teneu in La'oinis. Venus Lefanav, Teneu La'achrav. Veima, Vimenu Lefanav, the Maitzi Shemra, Teneu La'achrav, the day. Deloi Lucky, maybe that's what the Pasuk is coming to teach us. Einach and Hami. Vasi Oines, Ugamar Minei. But my government, he said, how you learn Oines from our case? On the first white line, either way, we could ask that what? On the second line, so whichever way you cut it, the Gemara is bothered that you cannot learn on Maitzi Shemra from this case because Maitzi Shemra doesn't have a Maisa. Rather, says Rav Yochanan a Chiddush, says the Gemara, that any time this person is married, he has a special dictum to go back and remarry her. And therefore, that is what the assay is there for, that only if he divorced her, now he has the halacha that he has to go remarry her. And that's why there's not going to be Makkos, because the Torah is mamish allowing the sin to be rectified. But wait, dami, as Rabba to Rava, Volodame lave lilav de chasima. This is not the same as the quintessential lav, which is the lav of muzzling. That's the quintessential case of malchus. Says the Gemara, but there's no assay with it. So by us where there should be no malchus. Amar le mishadextiv beirachmana assay yisera. Because the Torah wrote an extra assay, migra gara, says the Gemara, is going to make it less? Shouldn't be. The fact that there's an extra assay makes him more chayiv. Says Mara, wait, the Gemara, it's mamish. Goes counter to everything we're saying. What's all your side of lav and nitik lasei? Even though there's the assay, there's still a lav. Lema misham. The same aside. There's an extra say, it should be worse. That's the defining detail there. It's coming to remedy the lav. And whereas by us, the Gemara is suggesting is not. So in the last line, says the Gemara, this is there's precedent of these cases. Now when there is as biloi v'loi biloi, in such a case, as we'll see soon, that's where there's the halacha of v'loi tiyeh leisha forever. Says the Gemara, Mandamar kimu v'loi kimlo ma'ikol meimar. But according to the Mandamar that says the brisa has to be read kimoi or v'loi kimoi, if you filled it, did not fill it, then what are you going to say? So we turn over to Tesvavim Bebeis and suggest the Gemara, Midu Taima El Rav Yochanan. That's only the reason of Rav Yochanan. Hamarle Rav Yochanan Letani, Batlai, Chayiv, and Loi Batlai, Pater. Rav Yochanan himself remarks that only if he's batal it, then he's chayiv to the malchus. But if he was not mevatel it, then he's not. So what do we see? Rav Yochanan does indeed hold that malchus is dependent upon whether he fulfilled the actual assay, and that's where Rava and Ravin came along to explain what they explained. Now the Gemara explains that Tana Kamed Rav Yochanan. Kol mitzvahs loisas eishishma kol maasei kayim maasei sheba pater bintul asei sheba chayiv. Amar le my kamrit yikayim pater loikiyim chayiv bintul chayiv loy bintul pater. So he explains what exactly is he referring to. Says the Gemara, he's referring to kiyim pater loikiyim chayiv. That's if he's mekayim, that's easy. Bintul chayiv loy bintul pater. Bitloi, v'loi, bitloi. It's going to be, excuse me, that's the next case. So Tani, let's see this all inside. Bitloi, v'loi, bitloi. Rashakish amar kaimoi, v'loi, kaimoi. B'mai kamifli. Basra is suffix. That's the crux. Kamifli, marsav asra suffix. Yishma suffix. B'mashav asra suffix. Loi shmei asra. And that's where this machlekes is going to stem from. We'll pick it up as we'll figure out the Lishitaslis over here the next year. Mirza Hashem.